That's gotta be game of the year. I can't see anything else topping that. Okay, look, I'll play your game, alright? I swear. It'll be game of the year, I promise. I didn't need to say that about Elden Ring. Elden Ring is shit, okay? It's terrible. You don't have to stand there like that, please. God of War is the snatcher of Game of the Year, isn't it? In 2018, I bet my bank account that Red Dead 2 would be Game of the Year, and it got beaten by a bald dad with an annoying son. Fuck. And this year, I was betting my left nut that Elden Ring would be Game of the Year, and it was alongside Bill Clinton. God of War Ragnarok was so damn good. You know, I've been hyped for this game ever since I played 4 back in January, and during that hype train while watching the trailers, I started to get a bit worried about copy and pasting, things like combat and animations looking very similar, and how the story would play out since it was introducing fucking Tyr, Odin, Thor, Ragnarok itself, and on top of that, having to balance everything is set up in the last game, like Kratos' prophecy and Freya's revenge. It just seemed like a lot for one game. I was worried about it for a time, but Jesus Christ, were my fears quelled, because God of War Ragnarok is fucking fantastic. Considering how much it had to balance from everything I just mentioned, all the new characters and things in the last game, I am in shock at how well everything turned out. The story of Ragnarok is fucking fantastic. I loved it. It carries a similar tone to the last one, with the obvious father-son connection being a big focus, but put slightly more on the back burner this time around, with the main gods and Ragnarok taking center stage. And things start out great right off the bat with one of the best openings I've seen in gaming in a while. We finally get that payoff for that amazing tease at the end of 2018 that I don't want to spoil. You could spoil it to me. I beat his asshole, right? I slapped his fat Jubilee belly up and down Midgard, right? What is wrong with you? I've lost a lot. But after this amazing opening, I've got to say it does slow down for a while, and this is my only major complaint with Ragnarok's story, at least compared to 2018's. 2018's was so well paced, and that's mostly due to the simplistic nature of the story. Kratos and Atreus wanted to spread their mom's ashes from the highest peak in the realms. That's inherently a very simple plot, and the story essentially fell into place from there. But with Ragnarok, it isn't placed nearly as well, which was always going to be the case with how much they had to balance, but it's still a bit of a flaw. The game kind of gets a bit lost during the second half of the story as you're just following Atreus from location to location as he tries to figure out everyone's fate and who Loki is. It doesn't really drag. I was still enjoying myself, and everything here did have a purpose to the overall story, but compared to something like 2018, it was a bit more convoluted. Like I said, it doesn't drag, and I was still enjoying myself, and especially the story between Atreus and Kratos, that was definitely the highlight of this half, moving the story along with the two of them constantly butting heads.
You are my son.
Then why don't you trust me?
If you want me to trust you, then tell me the truth.
The truth is you're being a complete asshole.
I abused him after he did that. But the midpoint definitely did feel a bit padded. It takes its time and doesn't fully kick off until I'd say the 10 to 12 hour mark, maybe even a bit longer. But once it does get going, it really gets going, because that final half makes it so worth it, with a great boss fight, shocking twist, all culminating to an amazing finale, and the music that accompanies that finale is so damn good, literal goosebump worthy. Bro, this fucking music is so good. Jesus Christ. Still an amazing story with incredibly touching moments, and it's insane how in a story that had to juggle as much as it did, they were able to keep a pretty decent pace and even squeeze in touching scenes between Atreus and Kratos.
On our journey together, you have grown into a warrior worthy of your namesake.
While at the same time balancing out all the different arcs from the first game, and they did a damn good job at that, with the only one that ended up being a bit disappointing being Freya's story kinda ended up falling a bit flat for me. But she was the only one, everyone else was great, even the dwarfs. Both are way better here, being used way more than just for comedic relief, and actually have super interesting stories this time with huge payoffs in the end. And usually I don't talk about antagonists, but Thor and Odin damn near steal the spotlight at times as the main villains, with Thor specifically being fantastic and surprisingly mirroring Kratos in many ways, which makes their encounters that much more entertaining. And Odin, while I was a bit disappointed by his goofy design and voice at first, it slowly grew on me, and over time I really liked the nice guy exterior, psycho interior mob boss persona that they went for. The two of them were great antagonists and actually have really cool dynamics with the protagonists, Atreus and Kratos, Thor's dynamic with Kratos, Atreus' with Odin. It was really well done. And while the two of them definitely are the protagonists of the story, I mean obviously Kratos is, you play as him for 80% of the game, it's clear the real main character of the story is actually Atreus far more than Kratos. The story focuses on his development way more than Kratos' or anyone else's.
His aspirations and curiosity leads the story along as Kratos essentially just follows him from place to place, and it's clear Santa Monica is focusing on his arc far more than Kratos is, which makes sense considering that Kratos had his in the original trilogy and in 2018 along this one a bit as well. And they even lean into the idea of Atreus being the main character, because notice how I said that you play as Kratos 80% of the time. That's because the other 20% you play as Atreus as he gets his own story sections. Now when I first started playing as Atreus, I got a bit worried as flashbacks to Sony's other exclusive, Spider-Man PS4, appeared in my brain in those very fun sections where you play as MJ for 30 minutes on end, but those fears were quelled at first kinda, because Atreus is actually far more fun to play than I was expecting. He has a much different gameplay loop than his dad, being more of a ranged character, and instead of dealing high damage, he deals high stealth using finishers to kill off his enemies, while at the same time being super quick and nimble. He's actually surprisingly fun to use in combat, but the thing is, I like Kratos more. But I mean, it's still fun and can serve as a break from Kratos. I mean, there were people that were complaining about his gameplay in 2018 getting a bit repetitive, and while I never really got those complaints and was never really bothered by it, I could see why. So maybe this was Santa Monica's response to those complaints, and it's not a horrible one. We do still get some pretty interesting scenarios with Atreus and certain other characters that I won't spoil, and he does get some pretty interesting developments during these sections, but the problem is, it goes on for too damn long. I like these characters, I like the relationship it built, but holy fuck, did it really have to last 2 fucking hours long? That is a feature-length film to develop 2 characters, one of which had a whole game in 2018, and the other who barely ever shows up again. So on one hand, I like the characters, but after 2 fucking hours of exclusively focusing on them, yeah, I better fucking like them. And on the other hand, I have something called shit attention span, and I played this at like 3 a.m. and damn near fell asleep at times. Please tell me this section's almost over. I fucking hate this entire section. It just went on and on to the point of exhaustion. There were so many times where I thought it was about to be over. And Gerboda would say, come over here when you're ready to go, and I would dead sprint over there thinking it's time to play as Kratos again. And then we'd ride on whatever the fuck this is. Then Angerboda would say, come over here when you're ready to go. I'd go, we'd fight Grandma. Then Angerboda would say, come over here when you're ready to go. It's 5 a.m. now. At this point, I told myself 2 hours ago that I'd go to bed now expecting this to be a feature-length film. I'd go thinking, finally, it is over. Then we'd go in a cave searching for fucking paint.
God, man, I need to get some. Isn't there a Home Depot or Lowe's that they can go to get some paint? Oh, Home Depot? It is my favorite spot. I drag Atreus there every morning.
Thankfully, the other Atreus sections weren't anywhere near as long as this one, usually like 15 to 20 minutes-ish. But even then, this section just rubbed me the wrong way to the point where every time I had to play as Atreus, I was instantly put in a bad mood.
I bet going through that boring Atreus part must be so fucking annoying in new playthroughs. Like,
yeah, probably. That might actually make people not want to fucking do new game pluses. It happens constantly, even in the fucking climax that happens, and just ruins the pacing of any mission that you're doing. Once again, I understand why they did it, to spruce up gameplay and change it up and give Atreus some development, since it's hard to do if Kratos was there 24/7. And like I said, Atreus' gameplay is fun enough, but I like Kratos' way more. These Atreus sections are without a doubt my least favorite part of Ragnarok, and the reason for that is because it took me away from Kratos' combat loop, which is just so much more fun in comparison to Atreus' because of how much more well done it is. Which honestly is a compliment to the game. Your main combat loop is so well done that I didn't want to stop playing it. Why are you forcing me to stop? The combat in 2018 was already great, but it's somehow made even better here through improvements that I didn't even know the game needed. For starters, they did seem to try to spruce up every encounter to not make them feel as similar as they did to one another in the last game by changing up the arenas. In 2018, basically every arena was just a flat battlefield that you could kill your enemies in, but here there has been an attempt to change it up by adding things like hazards, like rocks that you could chain together and hurl at your enemies, and a new leaping attack that's incorporated directly into the battlefield by splitting it up into platforms for you to jump off of and fuck your enemies up in midair. It isn't the most complex or innovative change, but it does do a decent job at making combat encounters feel a bit different from one another, better than in 2018. Some other slight changes that they made were to the upgrade system, which are also just as satisfying as ever, and a lot of the skills returned from 2018, with Kratos only getting a few new ones, but Atreus getting a decent amount of new stuff to mess around with. Just look at his skill tree, it is way more expansive, and he even has his own runic attacks now, calling in wolves, riding this fucking weird-ass bull thing. It's super fun and nice to have a 4th runic attack. But with Atreus, unfortunately, on his own adventures from time to time, he also gets his own companions to replace Kratos, and Kratos gets his own companions from time to time to replace Atreus when he's not around. It doesn't change the combat up too much. I mean, your allies don't have any upgrades, obviously, but basically behave the same way as Atreus. Click square to get a quick assist from them, with each ally doing a different thing. It's a fun idea, and it does make way for some great banter between the two characters, with Brock definitely having the best by far.
Hey, got another riddle for you. What gets bigger the more you take away from?
Well, let's see. Something abstract, I expect. Appetite? No, that doesn't work.
Stump the stump.
Oh, isn't that clever?
Wow, Goaty, you sure did give up on that riddle in a hurry.
I give up nothing. Gets bigger the more you take away, is it?
That's right.
Sorted. It's desire.
Nope.
What do you mean, no? Desire only grows when you take away the thing you desire. All right, it's not perfect, but let's hear your answer.
Oh, you won't get it out of me that easy.
Brock's riddle. Could the answer be nothing?
What gets bigger the more you take away? Nothing. I don't think so, brother.
I do not like riddles.
But without a doubt, the best new upgrade added to the game is this new charge up mechanic with your axe and blades. If you hit a bunch of enemies in quick succession without getting hit yourself, then you fully charge up your weapon, hit L1 and triangle to fucking destroy everything in your path. Attacking at double speed, shooting projectile waves with every one of your attacks, and immediately inflicting everyone with frost or fire. I'll admit it is broken as fuck, but I don't care. It's so fucking fun and definitely one of my favorite new combat mechanics added. One of, because my actual favorite new mechanic is the overhaul done to the shields. In 2018, the shield's purpose was fairly simple and got the job done. But here they've expanded it as your default shield breaks early on, forcing you to get a new one with two options. Either a defensive shield where you hold down block, slowly charging the shield up with every hit, or a more offensive, high risk, high reward one where blocking an attack at the last second powers it up for a shield blast, inflicting huge amounts of stun, prepping them in for an execution. And side note, but I love how they've upped the ante and how brutal some of these executions can be. Bye, my friend. Oh, you are so much my friend. Jesus fucking Christ! Okay. Now, I'm usually not one to tell you how to play your game, but choose the Dauntless Shield, it's so fucking satisfying. Learning an enemy's moveset and being able to consistently get those parries off is so fun, and those sound effects make it feel so much more impactful, the block and the bash, and it definitely helps that the enemies fly away like fucking Smash Bros characters every time they're hit by your shield. Although this can fuck up from time to time as your enemies fly straight into an inaccessible area. So you have to sit there and wait for them to very slowly roll down. There are some more shields with fun mechanics that you unlock later on that vary in usage. Of course, you get your old shield back from 2018 near the halfway point, and it behaves basically the same as it did in that game. So if you like that one, you get it back halfway through, but I preferred the Dauntless and stuck with that for majority of the game. But I also unlocked two others. The first being the Shatterstar Shield, which has an interesting mechanic. The longer you block without getting hit, the more your shield charges, and when it fully charges, Kratos punches it, sending enemies flying around everywhere. It's an interesting mechanic, but kinda useless aside from one of Surtur's challenges, where you can easily cheese the whole thing, and don't worry, we'll get to Surtur's bullshit trials later. And the other one I unlocked, I actually really like, the Onslaught Shield, which allows you to charge your enemies, and the longer charge you get, the more stun you inflict when you hit them. And it's such a fun shield for aggressive playstyles, a great way for you to start an engagement or quickly close the distance between you and your enemy. Definitely my second favorite shield, but even with that one, I did eventually just default back to the Dauntless. Those parries are just too damn satisfying to let go of. It does make the game harder though. If you want to go easier, then use one of the defensive shields, but honestly for me, it's worth the drop off, and honestly Ragnarok is pretty surprisingly difficult, Dauntless Shield or not. whether that be out of a well-designed difficulty or because Kratos seemingly falls in love with one enemy and refuses to look away from them as he gets swarmed and cornered by the 10,000 enemies thrown at him, all because the targeting does not seem to want to switch to the other fucking enemy right next to the one you're targeting, meaning that you can't see what the fuck anyone is doing except for the one fucker your cursor is glued to, leaving you open to constantly getting smacked from the side or behind because the targeting was incapable of turning the fuck around. Turn around. Target the one that's in your face. The one that is in your face. Target them. Target. I genuinely don't know what happened to the targeting in Ragnarok. It is my biggest issue with the combat by far. It led to so many early game deaths until I stopped using it. Pro tip. In group encounters, do not target. It's gonna feel clunky at first, but it is so much better than being locked onto one enemy. That is gonna get you killed constantly. Flick that right stick all you want, bucko. It ain't happening. 1v1s, go for it. It works fine there, but in group encounters, unless you're kinky and like getting spanked, do not do it.
I am kinky. It is why I do not turn around.
Everything else about Ragnarok's combat is great, and improvement. Even the difficulty, while it can be a bit bullshit at times compared to 2018's, I'm fine with it. In my opinion, this game is far more difficult than 2018. Maybe it's because I played on hard mode, or because I used the Dauntless Shield, which leaves you open to getting fucked, and get fucked I did.
Careful, brother. You're covered in Bifrost.
But even then, Jesus Christ. A lot of old enemies from 2018 return here with some added moves, but there's a whole host of new enemies in Ragnarok, and practically every one of them is fucking insane, except for the default Asgardian warriors, ironically enough. These guys are piss easy. Not the brutes, fuck those shanking dickheads. I'm actually gonna die. Can you fuck? The regular shirtless guys, yeah, they're pushovers. But everyone else, fuck them. Fuck off. Bro, they don't get stunned at all. Bro. Fuck off. All the new enemy types, and even some of the old ones, can be pretty fucking insane with how spammy they can be, and the fact that they can stun lock your ass straight into death. What the f? I'm getting shanked like I'm in the fucking UK. This isn't really a complaint for me though, since I'm a weirdo that likes difficulty, and I like learning these movesets, and over time noticed myself easily beating some of the enemies that were kicking my ass a few hours earlier, like these weird shark things from Svartalheim. They were killing me early game, but as time went on, I learned their moveset and can pretty easily parry and beat them now. But by far the most annoying addition to this game, which I do not like because it isn't fun difficulty, it's go fuck yourself difficulty, are Nokins. These little shitheads sing the most cancerous song in the world, but apparently to the enemies it's the fucking Doom Eternal soundtrack because it beefs them up to the point where they're goddamn invincible, and so you go out of your way to kill these little shitheads. But good luck doing that, because they constantly bob and weave your attacks and hide in the most annoying areas in the world, like a plant that you have to burn while at the same time dodging the horde of enemies swinging at you. Or a room that's fucking locked from the outside. What do you want me to do, dick lips? But aside from them, every other enemy type is pretty fun. They can be punishing, but are satisfying to learn and make the combat a lot more difficult, but fun in my opinion. And as a whole, the combat is fantastic, definitely a step up from 2018, with the only flaw being the targeting. Again, it is horseshit, don't know what happened, but just don't target in horde fights, I guess. It's a little clunky, but you get used to it, problem solved. And targeting for 1v1s and boss fights works just fine. And speaking of which, the boss fights in Ragnarok are fucking fantastic. I won't be showing footage from any of the major main story bosses to avoid spoilers, just some of the monsters you encounter. But overall, the main story bosses are great, and in my opinion might be slightly better than 2018's. There really isn't too many main story fights similar to 2018, which I do find a bit disappointing. In 2018, you only really fought 3 gods, Magni, Modi, and Baldur, while splitting those fights up with a general who was pretty lame and some random monster encounters. And by that I mean an ancient reused 20 times, or an ogre with a club reused 1,000,000 times. Ragnarok keeps the formula similar, a few boss battles with gods split up by random monster encounters, but I think it works better in this one. The fights with the gods are just as good as they were in 2018, with my only real complaint is that they never really reached the scale that they did in that game. They're still good, but a lot more grounded, whereas with Baldur, everything had a much more epic feel to it all, fighting on the top of a fucking dragon that's flying around and beating the shit out of each other in midair while flying through hell. Nothing in Ragnarok really reaches that. The opening is great, but the climaxes, while they are still epic, don't get me wrong, are, like I said, a lot more grounded than I was expecting considering the people that you're fighting. But where the improvements to the boss battles really shine here is in the variety of monster bosses, which I'm so happy to see. I only encountered a few ancients, far less than I did in 2018, and the ogre with the claw boss fight one time, and it was in a side area, not even once in the main story, which is a huge step up from 2018.
It is because we killed them all in 2018. We drilled their species into extinction.
The only time you see them in the main story is in a cutscene where Kratos just casually lobs its head off before it can do anything. I'm pretty sure he was tired of fighting them also. Alright. Okay. I was not expecting that. I was expecting a boss fight? Alright. They've added 2 new monster encounters here that are reused a few times. These minotaurs that are pretty fun to fight against, and from my memory, I think you only fight them one time in the main story, although they do appear a few times in side areas. These weird rune boss things, which have a pretty interesting mechanic where you have to build up their stun by hitting their head, and once it's fully built up, you have to destroy one of the towers that's keeping them alive. It's a pretty fun boss and fairly different from the usual bosses where you can just spam hits over and over again. With this one, you have to time your hits right before they do an attack to stop them in place so you can deal massive amounts of damage. Although it is reused a few times, but nothing horrible. I've only encountered them 3 times, one of which was in a side area. And Drekkies that are also fun to fight, but unfortunately are reused a few times throughout the main story. Not as bad as the bosses were reused in 2018, and the time that they were reused here, there was an effort to make it feel slightly different with you fighting 2 of them instead of just 1. Overall, the boss battles in the main story are definitely an improvement to 2018's. I got sick and tired of the ogre with a club enemy type in that game, and here, I never really got tired of any of these main story bosses since they were used sparingly throughout it. Although these bosses are reused a few times inside areas, I've ran into a fair share of Drekkies and the Minotaur twice, but that's nothing compared to the Hateful, which is a fitting name because I hate this boss. And they were reused not 1 time, not 2 times, not 3 times, but fucking 6 times!
They'll probably be extinct by the end of this too.
Thankfully, it's a side mission and you don't encounter them once during the main story, so you don't have to fight them. Thank God for that, because if I'm gonna be honest, it's a really shitty boss in my opinion that's not worth fighting. You encounter them in these things called Draugr holes, and there's 6 of them around the map, and every one of those holes spawns this fucker. The same fucker with the same moveset every time. The only difference is how much damage he does, which ranges from a decent chunk to practically fucking one-shotting, and whether they're alone or not. When they're not alone, this fight is even more bullshit as it quickly just turns into an annoying gank fight, and when they are alone, it's still bullshit because they just beef up their damage and let them poise through whatever the fuck you throw at them before their skinny ass immediately stun locks you into the grave.
Why don't you get stunned? Why don't you get stunned by fucking anything?
Like I said, it is just a side mission, so you don't have to do them. But as side mission bosses go, I do not like these guys. And I like them even less at first because I thought they were the Valkyrie's replacements from 2018, which were so fun to fight and actual satisfying challenges, not gank fight bullshit. But I was wrong because the actual replacement for the Valkyries are Berserkers, who are fantastic. I still like the Valkyries a bit more, but the Berserkers are nothing to slouch at. Their fights are fun as hell, all very unique. I've only fought 3 of them so far, but I enjoyed all of them. They've got super fun movesets to learn, and are actual satisfying challenges to beat. Definitely a worthy substitute for the Valkyries, and a super fun side mission overall, and I could say that for most of the side missions in this game, they are a definite step up from 2018. The side content in 2018 was passable, but kind of boring. It was basically just a spirit asking you to do something, then you'd go out and do it. And while those side missions are still unfortunately here and are still pretty boring in my opinion, they aren't as frequently used as they were in 2018 and are split up by side missions that are actually far more engaging, with the best by far being the ones that explores the character's past a bit more with some interesting dialogue and cutscenes. I'm not going to get too much into specifics as then we'll be going into spoilers, but the more character-centric side missions are easily the best, and thankfully there are a few of those. But easily the highlight from 2018 side missions return here, the Muspelheim Trials, with a whole host of new challenges that are just as fucking bullshit as ever. Some are super easy, like just beating enemies in a time limit, or that previously mentioned one where you just have to knock enemies off the map and you can easily cheese it with this shield. But some are also fucking insane where I could just barely beat it within the time limit. This King of the Hill one, I got so fucking lucky. You have to keep enemies out of this circle, simple enough, but then in the second wave, another circle appears. Okay, that complicates things, but at least you can pretty consistently leap attack them off the circles. And then in the third wave, a third circle appears. Okay, now what the fuck?
Get off!
Oh.
Get off!
No, you got it. I think you got it.
Yes! Oh my god! Fuck me, those pixels.
But it doesn't end there, as the Feed the Rift trial is just as fucking bullshit as God of War suddenly turns into basketball, and you have to kill the enemies for them to drop a rock, and then throw those rocks into this black hole to get a point. I just barely got past the first wave, and I thought I was done.
Oh, I could do it! No! Where's it? Get it! Oh.
Yeah, guess what?
Peachy.
What?
What, you think that was the easy part?
Oh, come on.
It took me a depressingly long time to beat this one, and I was so fucking happy when I did, but that's nothing compared to the one that I just straight up cannot beat. Health steal, you're constantly taking damage and hitting an enemy regenerates that damage. While that inherently doesn't sound too bad, and honestly it sounds like a challenge that's for me, just go in super aggressive, but the problem is, this trial is intentionally designed to be as pesky as fucking possible. Every enemy that would make this harder is thrown in here. People who teleport so that you could lose health as you try to chase them down, enemies that light you on fire and throw fire projectiles so that your health plummets faster than an asteroid when you get inflicted by it, Draugrs that punish you for being aggressive by exploding as soon as you hit them, lighting you on fire, meaning you have to play slightly more defensive when they spawn in, backing up, throwing your axe, but then your health is draining because you're not being aggressive. And if that wasn't enough, after killing all the waves, spending like 5 minutes of your life doing this bullshit challenge, the final wave, they throw in 3 fucking light elves and 2 Nokins. I'm not doing this. I don't fucking give a shit. This is bullshit. I'm not fucking doing it. Fuck this entire fucking trial. Now, it might seem like I'm complaining, but believe me, I'm a weirdo, and I actually love these challenges. These trials are fun as fuck, and I'm super happy they returned. They're bullshit, especially on hard. They piss me the fuck off, but I like a good challenge, and finally completing them is so damn satisfying, and I will beat that fucking health steal challenge. I will fucking beat it, and I'll spit on the developer that made it after I'm done. Super happy to see them return. Easily one of my favorite side missions in the game. Maybe my favorite next to the Berserker, I'm not too sure yet. But the side missions as a whole, not just the Berserkers and Trials, but the missions too, are a definite improvement to 2018's. They are far better from the boring ass Spirit missions from that game, and it's insane how many of them there are. There is so much content here for your $70, to the point where I honestly got overwhelmed by the amount of side missions the game just suddenly started throwing at me.
Anyway, we should look around.
Bloody Odin. We could likely reach the other side of this canyon if there was still water running through it. Another Trekkie.
It'll eat its way through everything here. Let's track it down.
Holy fuck, this area has so many side missions.
I've got a good feeling.
Another side mission. Please, I beg of you, don't do this to me. I'm done. I'm moving on with the main story. But it really isn't quantity over quality. Sometimes maybe a little, but majority of these favors are super fun. Sure, there are the boring Spirit ones that are just filler, but it's outweighed by the amount of cool shit that you can find. Character-centric missions with cutscenes that wouldn't feel out of place in the main story, to main story-worthy bosses like this amazing fight with this dragon. I am shocked at how much better the favors are in this game compared to 2018, and just how much more there are. And the Muspelheim Trials and Berserkers are just the cherry on top. And the fact that it rewards exploration by giving you more side missions just makes it that much better, and there's a fuck ton to explore here. In 2018, there was a decent amount to explore, especially in Midgard, rowing your boat around, completing favors, but that was really it. Midgard was the main area. The other realms did have some stuff, but it was mostly linear. Majority of the exploration took place in Midgard. But with Ragnarok, they've taken that blueprint and expanded it like crazy, opening up a bunch of other realms. Some of the realms are still fairly linear, just a small town, while others are huge with wide open sections to explore, either through rowing your boat like in 2018, or through the new traversal mechanic, riding around on a sled, which I thought would be super clunky when I saw it in the trailers, but it actually works surprisingly well. They've opened up a bunch of other realms. Midgard, Svartalfheim, Alfheim all have a bunch to do now, with by far the most impressive and probably my favorite one to explore being Vanaheim, a new one. It starts off simple enough when you go there for the main story, just a forest area, fairly linear, with a bunch of annoying little spores that constantly explode, shooting poison all over you. But as you unlock this ability to change the time of day later on, it opens up whole new sections of the realm, and later on as you do a certain side mission, an entire second part of this realm is unlocked that looks completely different from the main one, and it has so much stuff to do. Crazy amounts of side missions, boss battles, changing the time of day to unlock even more, and this fucking dragon ripped straight out of the Penetrator's Archstone, constantly flying in and fucking up any fight that you were in, even a fucking boss battle.
The dragon's here!
What do you fucking mean the dragon's here? What is happening? Why the fuck is there a dragon? This is a huge step up from 2018. The exploration is way better this time around. Instead of just one realm, you have 4, and the scenery and environments in all these realms is fucking amazing. Graphically, this game looks great, even on PS4, but the environment is where it really shines. Everything just looks fucking beautiful. Every realm is super unique looking. The snow in Midgard, forests in Vanaheim, water in Svartalfheim, lava in Muspelheim, and the sands of Alfheim are all so well detailed and they look great. The only thing 2018 does better than Ragnarok in terms of exploration, and honestly it's kind of a big one, is the puzzles. The puzzles in Ragnarok have been neutered, and it sucks so bad because they did it to themselves. The mechanics behind the puzzles and the puzzles themselves are great and actually improved from 2018. Cool new gameplay mechanics like these bouncing rocks that you have to navigate your axe through, or chaining these runic arrows together to light something on fire. But no matter how good these puzzles are, they are immediately ruined by every character surrounding you.
Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block.
There's still the other chain to pull. But how are we gonna get to it?
Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block. Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block. Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block. Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block. Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block. Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block.
Nice one.
You have a solid 30 seconds to figure out what to do before Mimir or Atreus instantly spells it out for you, and it's so fucking annoying. Just stop. Give me a chance. I can do it. I swear I can do it. I can do it. Just give me time, Mimir. Stop. Don't open your mouth. I can do this.
Maybe you could try hitting the rope holding the block.
T minus 3 squared. Factor those. Gotta add that together. That gets 16 minus 12 plus 12 minus 9. And then subtract those and you get...
Boy, have you tried potentially subtracting the numbers together?
I was getting there, Kratos. And it extends beyond the puzzles. Even in fucking combat it happens, with Mimir and Atreus telling you the most idiots obvious shit in the universe.
You're on fire, Kratos.
No way, I'm on fire? You're dead, Kratos! This is my only complaint with this game's exploration and puzzles. Everything else was a huge improvement on 2018, even the puzzles. Without that problem, they would have been better than that game. It's just that they've been neutered by the characters holding your hand for you. And honestly, that could be said for practically every part of Ragnarok. Everything from 2018 has been touched on and improved upon here, which is crazy because 2018 was already an amazing game. The only real thing I think 2018 does better overall is the story. I prefer the simplistic nature of it, but Ragnarok does still do a damn solid job at telling a more grand story and juggling all the different plot points and characters. Although while it is a great game and an overall improvement from 2018, there were still a surprising amount of issues that stack up. The terrible targeting, hand-holding nature, padded mid-game, and all-around kinda disappointing ending dragged it down for me, with the Atreus sections especially just completely taking me out of the story. And the fact that they kept appearing even near the end really hurt the game in my opinion. It's damn good, easily one of the best games of the year, that's not a question, but the issues drag the score down a few points for me. The final verdict for God of War Ragnarok is an 8 out of 10. It could have easily been a 9, hell, after completing this game my initial score in my head was a 9. But the more I thought about it, and while writing the script, I noticed some of the flaws and I have to lower it just that bit. I don't really use decimals, but if I did, it would be something like an 8.8. It is damn close to 9. A fantastic game, Santa Monica did a great job and improving on a game that was already great. 100% recommended and easily one of the best games of 2022.
An 8? What were you thinking? But yeah, man, your son's annoying. Maybe if you kept him on a leash and didn't force me to play as him, we wouldn't have this problem. The boy's a teen. He's a brat. He doesn't listen. Besides, even with those sections, it's still easily a 9. No, this is a 10. Easily a 10. This is Caleb. Hey, you didn't tell me you played the recorder. No! What did you do? Sorry, man. I don't really know how to play this stuff. Boy, you just started Ragnarok. Wait, Kratos, listen, look, I thought it was just an instrument. I didn't know it did anything. I thought it was just a recorder. Please listen to me. I can't, you can't do this to me again, not again.